Good evening or early morning or whatever this is. It's about 3. I'm about to go get in the bed. I haven't made a video in quite some time. And no, I do not feel like getting up and turning on the lights. I don't. My hall light is on, but there's that. But that's it. But I'm here. So, earlier this evening, I was watching the Netflix movie Respect. I don't know if it's a Netflix original, but it was on Netflix, and it's called Respect. The biography about Aretha Franklin. And as I watched it, it really made me think. Um, Definitely saddened me to think about how different things were for women back at that time and how difficult it must have been to just to be um, a woman at that time, and not even a woman, like a grown up, just a female. The movie talks about, or it shows her being molested and raped um, as a young girl. I think in this scene or whatever, maybe she was, you know, 10 or 11 or something. Um, and someone violated her and she couldn't tell anybody. And that is since insane. Like, I mean, I know that still happens now. Yes, women and girls are assaulted um, now. Yes, but I feel like back then, um, just from stories I've heard, from family, from watching movies, learning about history, I feel like it was way more prevalent then, especially since back then people would take women or young girls as their wives at young ages, as young as like 12, 14, or whatever. But that was just, it was struck something in me. Um, but then as she got older and she began to get famous, and her father put her in Columbia Records and helped her get her first um, album deal and everything. Like, there was so much control, so much abuse, so much physical abuse, domestic violence from her own father, and then from the man that she was with, and the next person that managed her, which became her husband until she walked away from him. And she just kept going through these cycles of abuse. And a lot of it stemmed, probably all of it stemmed from when she was molested and raped as a young girl. But back then, like, because the whole story, the whole movie, Respect, and of course, if you know anything about Aretha Franklin, when she came to fame, it was in the 50s and 60s, and women didn't have rights until 1974. So she was living in that era, in that time, that women couldn't do almost anything without the involvement and the permission of a man. So even though she was this, world renowned, or becoming a world renowned performer and singer, she still was getting beat behind closed doors. She still was getting slapped in the elevator and in the lobby of hotels, and it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. And it made me think about, excuse me, as a girl growing up. I'm 40 now, and my mother was born in 1950, and she is the youngest of, I think, 13 or 14 children. And so, of course, my aunts are older than her, and many of them are now deceased. As a matter of fact, I believe all of them are deceased except my mother. And she has what, her couple of her brothers are still alive, but all the women are now dead and gone. Rest their souls. And most of my aunts were married, or they had been married and were widows, um, or they had been married and they were, divorcees, and they stopped dating altogether. Like, they had children, grandchildren, everything, and some of them you never saw with a man. Um, my grandmother was married a couple different times, and after her last marriage in her, like, I don't know, like 60s or whatever, I never remember seeing her um, remarry or anything like that. She lived out her days with my aunts that also were unmarried. It was kind of like the Black Golden Girls, if you will. Excuse me. So my family is from St. Louis, Missouri. So when we would go, down there, they would be all in the house together. My grandma, my aunts, and then of course we were added to the bunch, visiting, and my mom and everything. And it was literally like watching the Black Golden Girls. And I used to think as a kid, like, why don't these women have husbands now? And then there were a couple of my aunts that never married. One in particular, my aunt Nadine, never married, never had children. And when I say she would go shopping and, do what she wanted to do and everything, um, I'd always wondered, like, what made her different. And watching the Respect film made me think back to her and how I used to wonder about that. But as I learned and grew and learned about history and how things evolved, I could just imagine that she probably chose to stay single. She probably chose to never become a mother because back in those days, being a woman was already scary enough. And if you married somebody, you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know what was going to happen to you. You didn't know what could happen to your children. You had no clue because you had no control. And it was basically, you know, a survival mode that a lot of women were in, especially if there were women that didn't work or didn't have any skills or hadn't went to school for anything or anything like that. My family, my mom and her sisters, they were nurses. They all worked in the medical field and had uncles that were professors, and so medical and education and things like that abounded, but some didn't go into those fields. And even if you did, though, even if, let's say, you were a nurse or whatever as a woman, before 1974, you couldn't even open a bank account without a man. You couldn't. buy a house. You couldn't buy a car. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't open a business. You couldn't do so many things without a man. And it's so interesting watching a film like that and the memories that it brought up. Um, and how crazy it is that nowadays, in the time that we're in, 2025, only 51 years after women receive said rights, if you look in the media and you look in like the media on the TV screen or social media, which most of us are on, um, whether it be, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, whatever, in the posts and the comments and stories and reels, everything that we look at, there are a lot of people, I'm sorry, a lot of men that would rather see women back in that survival mode that they used to be in so that they will need them enough for them to be able to treat them however they want. Women are in a powerful position now where they can walk away if someone even kind of behaves like they're going to mistreat them. They don't have to stay and grovel and beg for love or for care or for provision because they're able to make it themselves. And for a lot of men, that is scary or that is off putting or that is angering for them because they know that once upon a time, a woman had to be in a subservient second class citizen position as it pertains to the men or even the males, boy or man, simply because she was a woman. And this is not a race thing, this is a gender thing. Because it didn't matter if you was black, if you was white, if you was whatever, they didn't have rights neither. Okay? Their men could do whatever to them as well. It doesn't matter about the color or creed. This was about rights for women and how women had none and men had them all. It was just really interesting to me how the movie also kind of talked about, well, not kind of, actually did touch on, mental health and what abuse does to one's mental health and stability and how that affected her and how she had to, get through that and fight what they kept calling a demon or whatever. But it all stemmed from the abuse that she endured just because she was a woman. And that is crazy. Really crazy. So, just food for thought. Women have fought long and hard to be able to just be, to be able to exist, to be able to open their own bank account and do things for themselves without having to ask permission of a man. And it would be awesome if we were celebrated more for that, um, celebrated more for being able to, you know, contribute equally in society and all the things. But instead, a lot of times it is met with, disdain because we're not barefoot and pregnant and in the kitchen waiting on all the men while they watch the game or whatever. You know, so many people seek to put us in our place. And I just hope for any woman in this time to really understand that and really understand the power that they have for themselves and to not take it for granted. Because the same way that we got those rights is the same way someone could try to impede upon them. I strongly doubt if that will ever occur, but I don't know. And this is just in the United States. There are still places in the world till this day in 2025 where women have less rights than men. In 2025, there's still places in the world where women cannot vote. There's still places in the world where women cannot speak unless a man allows them to. There's still places in the world where women cannot wear what the hell they want, can't do what they want, can't be who they want because they are under the thumb of men. Oh my God. I see why a lot of people come to this country. Even though this is one of the most corrupt places to be, just like a lot of other places, at least we have a right to be here. Good night, y'all.